complex problems, that the lasting peace for Gaza can be secured.
Let's go live now to Brian Catalyst, Senior Fellow at the Middle East Institute. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. The last remains of Israeli hostages finally brought home, and the prospect of the reopening of the Rafah crossing potentially having huge implications. Just talk us through what those could be.
The main implication is that we should be moving from the first phase of this ceasefire that was announced in October of last year into the second phase. And that will require leadership and political will that we've not yet seen coming from the Israeli government or from whomever is leading this on the Palestinian side. There's still some open questions about whether the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah will even play some sort of role there. Key questions are, will Hamas disarm? This is a group that basically built its credibility on armed resistance against Israel, and there's no clear plan on who will do that. Another key question is who will actually govern practically day to day Gaza. There's a board that has been set up, an international board called a peace board that President Trump leads. There's also a technocratic committee of Gazans, but it's not clear how all of these pieces fit together. And then importantly, the urgent humanitarian crisis is still quite dire for millions of Palestinians in Gaza. It's not as bad as it was during the combat phase, but now is the time to build peace, and sometimes that is harder than actually ending wars.
Now, Israel and Hamas have been under a lot of pressure from ceasefire negotiators, including from the Trump administration, to move into this second phase. But from what you're saying, it sounds like a lot of those original questions still remain. Is it clear when you look at the peace board what governance, for example, would look like?
No, not at all. I mean, what we see in Donald Trump, as we've seen with his episodes on Greenland last week, is a lot of performative diplomacy that is in absence of the nuts and bolts of what needs to be done to actually help Palestinians govern themselves and do it in a way that promotes peace and stability in the region. So the sequence of how a possible international security force, where nobody has yet signed up for this in any tangible way, how all of these pieces of this puzzle fit together, it's not been clearly announced. What we did see last week are quite fantastical fantasy visions of $30 billion of investment in Gaza and skyscrapers and things like this. But what is missing right now is that sort of nuts and bolts. How do we move forward on each of these tough files? Disarming Hamas, redeploying the Israeli forces that control the vast majority of Gaza, and building a sense of decency and law and order for the millions of Gazans who've lacked that for years.
Now, if you were advising on the official plan, what would you say in terms of the sequencing of events and what should come first?
I think number one is you've got to actually empower Palestinians and the Palestinian people themselves. And the fact that there's not clarity about whether this is all connected, this Gaza Technocratic Committee of Palestinians, whether it's connected to the Palestinian Authority, is, I think, a real weak point, because ultimately a sustainable solution should lead to a two-state solution between Israelis and Palestinians. But none of these plans actually take a strong position on that.
Now, I want to look again at the Rafah border crossing. This would potentially, if it opened, make medical evacuations possible from Gaza, people looking for treatment elsewhere. Also potentially open the possibility for those who have fled Gaza to return home for the first time since this war started. How likely do you think it is that we will see much of that?
You're going to see some people, I think, cross the border, but it may be a trickle rather than a flood both ways. I have friends who lived in Gaza. I worked in Gaza in the 1990s for a couple of years. I talked to my friends in Gaza. It is a long, steep climb to actually rebuild Gaza. Some people who are outside when the war started will want to go back in and see their families. Some who've been denied urgent medical care will try to get across the border, but I don't see mass movements of people happening anytime soon, in part because I think a lot of Palestinians, after 2 years of war, simply are much more attached to where they came from, which is Gaza. And that's why we need a clearer plan towards a two-state solution on this front.
Brian, thank you so much for your insights today. Brian Catalyst with the Middle East Institute. We'll stay with us here on BBC News. There is more to come.